Who could forget the heart-stopping time in 2018 when the world watched on as expert divers worked to rescue 12 boys and their coach in what became known as the Thai Cave Rescue? Well, now that rescue has been made into an equally heart-stopping movie by Oscar winner Ron Howard. It was shot in Queensland, and while Ron is no stranger to working with Aussies, having directed Nicole Kidman, Russell Crowe and Chris Hemsworth, he was thrilled to finally get the chance to work with an Australian crew.
Hey Rick, you following what's happening in Thailand? Some kids stuck in a cave.
The film just had me on the edge of my seat. How did you do it? How did you make this film? Where were the caves? What did you do? In a nutshell, sum it up for me.
It was a big undertaking. I was grateful for every experience that I've had prior to making 13 Lives. We made it in Queensland for the most part. We did shoot a couple of weeks in Thailand once COVID subsided enough so that we could go, but we were able to do the lion's share of it in Queensland. All those caves were built, but with the utmost care and sense of authenticity, interacting with the real divers, explaining where the trickiest bits were, what the most dangerous moments were, so that we would have that suspense to go with a lot of really well-researched drama outside the cave.
It looks easy, but when it's flooded, it's impassable.
How did the divers feel about being portrayed by the likes of Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell, Joel Edgerton?
I think they felt great about it, because especially when they began to see how dedicated these guys were. All of the guys developed access and, had conversations with the people that they were going to play, but also they were teaching them the diving. And at a certain point, they had trained so well that Viggo came to me and said, I really want to do all the diving. And the other actors fell right into line with that, because they said that the cave diving is so specific that it's a part of their character, and they wanted to translate that properly.
In this film, we are not only focusing on the operation itself, but also the world building of the people around the operation. We are having a lot of cultural elements, like our culture of Buddhism, and also our culture of respecting the nature. We really focus on authenticity. So for the boys, having someone who can speak their local dialect.
So in the same way that I was leaning on Rick and John to make sure that the diving was accurate and that the world seemed honest and truthful from their perspective, I was really doing the same thing with the Thai actors, and it required a lot of trust, but I'm so grateful for those details. And I think audiences are responding to that in a very emotional way.
They're very, very dangerous.
High water level and the low visibility.
Barely shoulder wide, pulling against very strong currents.
Ron, I first interviewed you nearly 30 years ago at a junket in New York for your film The Paper. So we go way back.
John Seale was the cinematographer on The Paper, as you probably remember. Another awesome.
He was indeed.
I said to John Seale, I said, well, we can't afford to stop traffic. We can't afford to get enough extras in here to do this. And do you think we could just get it somehow? He said, stick the camera in the back of the van. Let's go.
It's Australians a lot.
Well, there's something to be said for that.
That was, a story about journalism and all that sort of stuff. And I was wondering if you'd ever revisit telling a story about the state of journalism today.
A fascinating subject, and so the answer is sure. If it depends on the story. With the movie Backdraft and The Paper, those were fictions, but I really wanted to get the atmosphere right. And it's the first time that I really began to do research and delve into more than just making the scenes entertaining, more than making the story move along well and the performances rich. And I really began to think about, taking a realistic world and bringing it to life in detail. And so that was a kind of a step toward Apollo 13, where I finally crossed over to a true story, of which I've been doing a lot in recent years, including documentaries. So it was one of those projects that kind of was a bit of a game changer for me.
You mentioned that you filmed in Queensland. I know you've worked with plenty of Australians over the years, but our crews are something else, aren't they?
They sure are. And again, I wasn't surprised at all, but it is nice to see that I didn't just happen to land on a few good eggs. It's a great place to work, great team. And look, Aussies don't complain much. That seems to be my observation. There was just none of that on this film. Everybody was so proud and wanted to get it right. We had the divers with us. They were around, and anytime it would get wet, cold, miserable, food was lousy or something like that, I think they just looked over and realized that for 18 days, those people put themselves through, you know, tremendous stress and discomfort to try to do the right thing. And, you know, we're fortunate, all of us, getting to tell this remarkable story and share details with the world.
They're here. How many of you?
13.
13! They're all alive.
Can we go out now?
One of the other things I loved about what you did when you came to Australia was your support of the Impact Screenwriting Program here.
Well, thank you. The whole idea of that program is to democratize the process of getting ideas into the mainstream. When you sort of peel everything away and just say, we're just interested in good ideas, who's got them? Turns out that people from all around the world who look and sound and speak different languages and believe different things, they have great stories to offer. But Australia has done a great job of educating its artists, in my opinion, as an outsider. And it's the reason that a relatively small country has such a giant voice in the cultural landscape.
Well, we might see you back here soon to shoot another by the sounds of things.
I'm trying, yes. I've definitely got my eye on the Australian experience. Yes, talking about a project, things aren't set yet, but it's feeling very, very likely. So I hope to be back sooner than later.
It's insane. It's unethical. It's illegal.
The man's already died. Breathe. We'll do nothing. We'll be bringing him out dead for sure.
So you are expecting casualties? Yes. I expect casualties.
Even the trailer makes me emotional.
I know.
It's full on.
Do you know what was incredible? We know what happened, right? We know the ending. And yet throughout that film, you were just on the edge of your seat. It's phenomenal what they've achieved. And you know, Elvis was shooting at the studios at Queensland at the same time. So they had to kind of build another production facility out in some warehouses, essentially, and then build tanks, water tanks, to build the cave for the interior. You know, the ingenuity on display here to make this film is incredible, but it's so emotional. You know, when you think of all the true stories that Ron Howard's told, you know, whether it be Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, Cinderella Man, so many, he's got this knack. I don't think this story could have been in better hands, put it that way. It's just amazing, and, you know, great performances.
And it just blows your mind that two Australians are at the centre of that rescue. Even just kind of being reminded of the story a couple of years later, that should never have happened. Like, they shouldn't have been able to get out alive. Like, that is just, they were up against so much bad luck, and it was the skill and the know-how of these people that
and the passion of the Thai people and the belief and their you know, and they credit their Buddhist faith too.
Prayer.
They really do, and their prayer, and that's incorporated into the film. It's all there.
But even the honesty to tell the story as it is. Like, sometimes you don't really know when it comes to true stories what is actually factual and what's a movie, but the lengths that he's gone to by the sounds of it's kind of
just amazing.
True for it.
So you can all see it for yourselves. It's on Prime Video, streaming from tomorrow.